Please start the discussion.
Okay, so first, I believe that we can rule out Rani from being a person of unethical behavior here, mainly because there might be a slight discrepancy in terms of the fact if she knew that Preeti loved SRK and everything, but that does not. So Preeti loving SRK and SRK not reciprocating basically means that there is no implication on Rani to not have a relationship with him. And while SRK did cheat on Rani, that is on SRK, and that is not something that is to be blamed on Rani. And I don't believe that she is at fault in any of the situation here. So that is one person that we can probably rule out.
Uh, I fully agree about the point about Rani. Similarly, with Preeti, we can't really hold her accountable for she did not know how SRK would react or how things would turn out. She could have. She was also in a dilemma about what the repercussions might be. We don't know her family conditions, and since this is a family doctor, the word could have gone around. So she was in a very hard place.
When it comes to Preeti, I do understand that she's a victim here, and what's happened with her is extremely wrong. Um, and definitely, there are no black and white sides to everybody, but I wouldn't place her at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to ranking people in terms of their unethical behaviors, because she did know that SRK and Rani were together, and she still went on with SRK. So that does put some ethical dilemma on her. That being said, I do realize that she's a victim in all of this and she is not to be blamed for anything that happened. It's just that aspect of it which would basically put her a little below Rani if I am ranking in terms of who has the most ethical standpoint in the situation.
Yeah, I agree with the point. Rani has the least accountability, and right above her would be Preeti for me.
What about what SRK did, the doctor did, nurse did? Try to discuss it.
I believe that what the nurse did was also very wrong, definitely. But what SRK did was probably a little worse because the nurse is not directly associated with the situation. But SRK refused to take responsibility for an action that he was actively involved in. So that is something that is entirely like extremely wrong on his part. Just shunning responsibilities and using Preeti as a commodity, even though he knew that he was with Rani. He broke Rani's heart probably, and at the same time was disrespectful and hurtful towards Preeti as well. So I believe that even though the nurse was wrong, SRK's actions seem to be a little more unethical than that of the nurse. Um, and obviously, the doctor is the worst in the situation, considering the fact that he blackmailed her to have sex without her consent, and on top of that he knew that there is nothing wrong with her, so he was basically exploiting her for her body, which basically makes him the devil of the lot.
I agree about the point about the doctor, but I would disagree about SRK and nurse. Personally, I do think neither of them go off scot free by any chance, but the nurse does deserve more of the blame. SRK might not be a very nice person, but the nurse had more of a moral and professional duty towards what would be considered her Preeti, who would be considered her patient since she was in the same hospital. She could have gone to administration or any of the higher authorities over the doctor and reported him.
I agree 100%. I am not saying in any sense that the nurse is in a right standpoint. Definitely, she is in the wrong and she should have gone to the higher authorities, if not to the doctor directly. But there is, because we don't know the situation that the nurse was going through. Maybe she had some very big financial strain on her head, and maybe she did not know that there's actually nothing wrong with Rani, or even if she did know, I'm not defending her choice in any way whatsoever. What she did was entirely unethical and wrong. But it also varies on how much of the story she actually knew. Whether she actually knew about how the doctor treated Rani or how he was blackmailing her or not, whether she took the 10K only for the hush money for the suspicion of her pregnancy, or whether it was knowing everything and then taking the 10K. So her, while her actions are unethical, how unethical they are subject to how much of the information was she aware of, in my opinion.
Fair enough. I do get that point of view, but just the thing that she did take 10,000 for whatever she was going to keep hush about, uh, she doesn't only violate a moral duty but also a professional duty. In my eyes, there's two duties she's violating. So that is why I would personally place her above SRK, but I get your point of view.
Harshita, Ronak, and Shubham, what are your views on each individual?
Um, so I would agree that the nurse is more at fault than SRK. Like his behavior can be termed as callous, and he did cheat and all of that. But as mentioned earlier, the nurse should have had a moral responsibility and a professional responsibility. And I think the case study did mention that the nurse found out about all this. So I don't think it really like matters if she knew only the exact part. Like if the case study mentioned that the nurse found out about all of it, I would assume that she knew what the doctor did. So in my opinion, she would definitely be second.
So I agree with Snigdha's point of view that SRK is more at fault here as compared to the nurse because he was actively involved in the situation and not the nurse. Yes, the nurse did take a bribe, which was wrong on her part, but when it comes to an ethical dilemma, I believe SRK has a much bigger role in that ethical dilemma as compared to the nurse.
Shubham? Yes. Yes, Shubham. Okay. Have any of you changed your decision about who was the most ethical, most unethical? Hello.
No, sir. The doctor still, in my opinion, the doctor still stands the worst.
Same thought.
Anybody wants anybody wants to add any dimension to this whole thing? Any new dimension? Can somebody justify SRK's action?
So I wouldn't exactly call it justification, but I would term it more as irresponsible than the words used for others, which are, ethically wrong. Like what he did was obviously very, very irresponsible, and even his reaction to all of it, he did not handle that well completely. But I like. It still wouldn't fall under something that is legally wrong.
Anybody would like to blame people for what else they did?
Sorry, what did you say? Blame who?
I said, would anybody like to put some more blame on Preeti for what else she did?
No.
Okay, this case is about conviction and convention. Conviction meaning that you are thinking rationally and practically, and what happened, you try to judge it from the current perspective. not from any moral or ethical perspective per se. And conventional is when you are thinking what all you have been taught since a child that these are wrong things, that this is right, this is wrong. Most of us tend to believe that we are thinking with conviction because we think that something is right or wrong. But if you analyze your thought process, you find that many of our decisions or judgments are because of convention and not conviction. For example, SRK, everybody is saying that he did something irresponsible or whatever, but for all we know, they may have used protection. So he said, I am not responsible. Maybe Preeti's character is like that she is going around with a lot of guys. So he says, why should I take the blame? To go and take the blame. For Preeti also, first of all, why did she go to SRK when he was clearly not interested in her? Secondly, when he didn't accompany her, why did she have to go to the family doctor? That would be the most stupid thing to do for anybody, to go to the family doctor. And then why give it to the family doctor? So maybe she is playing the victim card here to get to SRK or whatever. That is another perspective we could have had. Doctor obviously has done what we call as gone against his professional ethics and saying for the nurse. So try to think of all the angles before making a judgment. It is rarely that everyone blames the doctor and the nurse in this case. I've been doing it for a long time now. But few more things I would like to ask you, which I was not asking earlier, but I've been asking since last 3 4 years. It has got no implication for you, but if you can just take a guess that in college nowadays, what percent of men and women are not virgin, according to you? Take a guess, whatever you know about what's happening in colleges. Yes, Smita,
I think around 10 to 20% are not virgins.
10 to 20, both male and female
Yeah, both inclusive.
are not virgin. And what about you, Harshita?
I would say maximum 30%.
Are not.
Yes or not.
Ayushi,
So I think the number is closer to something around 45 to 50.
are not.
Yeah.
Rona,
I'd like to change my answer was 10 to 20% are virgins, not aren't virgins. Like they are the people who haven't had sex yet, 20%.
20 are.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
You're
Oh,
saying 80 are not.
I'm so sorry. I meant the same thing. I misinterpreted the question.
Okay, how many are virgin? Let's are. How many what percent are virgin, Smita?
Around 20% are virgins, 80% aren't.
80 are. Okay. Harshita,
The 30% are virgins and the remaining 70% are not.
Ayushi,
So somewhere around 35 to 40
are.
are.
Rona,
So I think 45 to 50 are.
okay. And Shubham,
I guess 5 to 10% are virgin.
90 are not. Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever is happening here uh, in this case is not something very out of the ordinary, is it? Is it?
No, it's not. It's something that happens very often.
It happens very often. So considering that, is SRK actually that liable? Just asking.
I mean, if we are to, so if we have that clarity if Preeti actually was with someone else or not, If she wasn't with anyone else, then SRK is liable. Not even if they use protection, protection does fail. So if that is the scenario, then yes, SRK is liable for his actions. Especially because I agree that Preeti is not at 100% at uh, ease because she did know that SRK and Rani are dating, and she did know that SRK is not interested, and still she went for him. So that is a perspective, correct? But also she had been in love with him for a very long time, and SRK did know about that, despite the fact that he was dating Rani. He also went for it, right? It was consensual. So he does hold responsibility. That is something that I believe.
Okay. That also brings us to one more question that I sort of forced you to say who was the most unethical. So in ethics, should we have degrees that someone is 10% unethical? If you take a bribe, you are 10% unethical. If you are a doctor and you perform abortions, then you are 90% unethical. Should we have degrees of ethics? Just like, if you steal something, you get 6 months in jail. If you murder someone, you get 7 years in jail. So ethics should be divided like that, degrees of ethics.
Ethics are very subjective. I don't think because what is ethical for one person or not ethical for one person is subject to the responsibilities that they hold as well. So, taking a bribe for a nurse, for example, might be viewed as a lot more unethical as a policeman taking a bribe on the road. So that is, I believe that ethics is a very subjective thing. It depends on a lot of scenarios. And while our task was to rank people based on how ethical it was, how ethical they were, that is why the whole dispute came about who was more unethical, the SRK or the nurse, because it's very subjective as to how you place them and how you perceive ethics as.
Okay. So you are saying that ethics is subjective, it's not absolute.
Yes.
Okay. And finally, uh, think for yourself and were you being convictional here or conventional in your thinking? Because that is something you have to understand that the stage that you are getting into now, you have to have more conviction than convention in. So, like I said, we tend to think that we are convictional, but we are actually conventional in our thought process. So, what do you think? You had been convictional in this whole process? Yes.
Mm, no, in my opinion, I was conventional. Uh, Honestly, I put myself in the shoes of Preeti and imagined how I would be in that situation and how I would hold accountability for everyone. So that is something that probably I shouldn't be doing.
Hmm. So, what should you have done?
I should have looked at the whole picture from an outsider's point of view, who understands that the information given to us is limited and not entirely true about everything that has happened. So, being a little more, I don't know, analytical about
Little more?
about it.
You
Like
lost
I
it.
took it. Hello.
Ah, you took it?
I took it with an emotional aspect. So instead of taking it along that route, maybe if I would have been a little more rational, that would have been better.
Is that what everyone else thinks?
Oh, yes, sir.
So, that brings us to another thing that being a judge is a very difficult task. We tend to think that when you read a newspaper, for example, on a sociological issue, some event which has happened, maybe a rape, and we tend to assume that what is reported is true, right? But there may be another newspaper which is reporting the same incident from another perspective, and we tend to judge. which one is speaking the truth. But we do that very conventionally. So that should open our eyes to the fact that being a judge is very difficult because you have to go by hard evidence, hard proof, be detached from it all, and then take a decision. And that's what we want to try and do in future, so that we are unbiased, sort of. Although we have our own biases as human beings, but then being a judge or being judgmental is very easy. So that's the easy way out. So when you are reading newspaper articles on any topic, try to see whether the reporter is reporting something in that particular way because he's being paid for it, or whether it's the truth, and what could be the counter story to what he is writing. That would make you write a better WAC. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So let's meet again tomorrow, 8:45 as usual.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.